The widow's door, when two strangers rode out of the sunset and changed her fate forever. Before we begin this story, comment your country below so we can see how far this story has reached. The wind swept across the Montana plains like a restless ghost, carrying the scent of cold iron and the promise of winter. The year was 1847, and the land was still wild, an ocean of grass and grit, bordered by mountains sharp as broken glass. Clara Whitmore stood on the porch of her ranch house, shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, staring at the dying sun bleeding red across the ridges. 6 long months had passed since they buried her husband behind the barn. 6 months of waking to silence, mending fences faster than she could break them, and fighting loneliness that cut deeper than any blizzard. At 32, she was still young by most reckonings, but the frontier didn't care about age. It carved lines in your face, built calluses on your hands, and tested you with every sunrise. The other ranchers had come by after the funeral, offering help, a kind word, a sack of flour. Then they'd stopped coming. Out here, pity had an expiration date. A widow alone on the plains was like a flickering lantern in the wind. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before it went out. Clara turned to go inside when she saw them. 2 shapes on horseback against the horizon, dark silhouettes moving slow, deliberate, as if measuring her land. She stepped back to the door and reached for the rifle leaning beside it. Strangers at dusk rarely meant good news. The riders drew closer. One was a man, tall in the saddle, coat flapping against the cold wind. The other was small, a child clinging to him, head tucked beneath his arm. They stopped at her gate, horses steaming in the chill air. The man swung down, stiff from the saddle. He called, his voice deep and steady. Sorry to trouble you this late. Name's Jacob Callahan. Town said you might be needing a ranch hand. Clara didn't lower the rifle. Who told you that? Old fellow at the general store, he said. Said the Whitmore place was being run by a woman too proud to ask for help, but might not turn it away if it came knocking. That sounded like old Henry. Meddling fool, but not a liar. And you just happened to be looking for work. Yes. Been on the trail 3 weeks. My daughter and I need a place to winter. I can handle cattle, mend fences, fix what's broke. Don't drink, don't gamble. You'll get a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. The child slid off the horse and stood beside him, a little girl, maybe 7 or 8. Her hair was tangled, her face pale beneath road dust. She clutched a cloth doll to her chest like it was life itself. Papa, she whispered, her voice trembling. I'm cold. Something shifted in Clara's chest, sharp and sudden. The cabin behind her felt too quiet, too empty. Too much space for just one soul. What's your name, sweetheart? She asked softly. Lily, the man said. Lily Callahan. Clara studied them. The man's coat was patched, the child's dress was faded. But their eyes told the same story she saw in her own mirror. People who'd lost too much and were still standing anyway. You can put your horses in the barn, she said finally. Fresh hay in the loft. When you're done, come on in. There's stew on the stove, and it's too much for one person. Jacob blinked, surprised, then nodded once. We're obliged. Truly. As he led the horses away, the little girl's small hand stayed locked around his. The wind rose again, scattering dry leaves across the yard. Winter was coming, but for the first time in months, the thought didn't scare Clara. Inside, she stirred the stew and took down 3 bowls instead of 1. The cabin felt different tonight, less like a tomb, more like a home learning how to breathe again. The knock came after dark, soft but steady. Clara opened the door, and there they were, the drifter and his daughter, standing beneath a silver wash of moonlight. Jacob's coat was damp with melted frost, his hat in his hand. The little girl, Lily, clung to his leg, eyes wide but trusting. Come in, Clara said, stepping aside. Fire's still warm. The cabin greeted them with a smell of stew and wood smoke. The flames cast gold and amber across the walls, making the small space feel almost alive again. Lily's eyes wandered everywhere. Over the patchwork quilts, the shelves lined with books, the clock ticking slow and steady on the mantel. It's real pretty, Lily said in a shy whisper. Clara toned, surprised by how long it had been since anyone called her home pretty. Thank you, sweetheart. Would you like to help me set the table? Lily nodded eagerly. She placed the bowls and spoons with both hands, her movements clumsy but careful, as if handling something sacred. Jacob watched her with quiet pride, his rough features softening in the firelight. When they finally sat down, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was peace, the kind born of exhaustion and need. Clara ladled out stew, rich with potatoes, carrots, and a pinch of hope. Jacob ate slow, every bite deliberate, as if tasting more than food, tasting normal life again. How long since a mother? Clara asked gently. Jacob's gaze dropped to his hands. 4 months. Fever. Took her quick. He paused, jaw tightening. Had a small place in Wyoming. But staying there, it hurt too much. So we rode, trying to find something that didn't feel like goodbye. Clara said nothing. Grief didn't need filling. It just needed room. After a while, Lily's head began to droop, her spoon slipping from her fingers. Clara smiled softly. She's half asleep already. Jacob nodded. Been a long road. There's a small room off the kitchen, Clara said. Used to be storage, but it's warm. If you're willing to stay, I'll pay $30 a month and board. But it's not charity. You'll earn it. Jacob blinked, caught off guard. You're offering me a job. I'm offering a trial, she said. 2 weeks to prove you're as good as you say. This land doesn't forgive mistakes. He met her eyes, steady, honest. You'll get no mistake from me. You have my word. They shook hands across the table, his callous palm meeting hers. It wasn't romance. Not yet. But something passed between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. Lily had fallen asleep at the table, cheek pressed to her doll. Clara stood. Finish your coffee. I'll take her. She lifted the girl gently. Too light, too thin. The kind of thin that came from miles on the road and too many nights without supper. Clara carried her to the little room, laid her on a soft feather mattress, and tucked the quilt under her chin. The girl stirred only once, murmuring, "Thank you," before drifting away. When Clara returned, Jacob stood at the hearth, staring into the fire. "I'm grateful," he said. "Clara," she corrected, "and you can save your thanks. This ranch will test you soon enough." He gave a tired smile. 6 months, he said quietly. "That's how long it's been for you, isn't it?" Her breath caught. "Yes." "It gets quieter," Jacob said. "Not easier, just quieter." For a long moment, they stood there, two broken people holding on to the same silence. Then he nodded once, polite as ever. "I'll start at sunup. I'll have breakfast ready by 5. That night, when the fire died low, Clara lay awake listening to the soft breathing from the next room. For the first time since Samuel's death, the silence didn't hurt. It hummed with something new, something alive. Hope. The smell of coffee reached Jacob before the first light did. For a moment he forgot where he was. The warmth, the stillness, the sound of fire crackling close by. Then it came back to him. The widow's kindness, the promise of work, and the small miracle of his daughter sleeping safely under a real roof. He sat up quietly, careful not to wake Lily. She was curled on her side, her doll tucked under her chin, her hair dark tangled across the pillow. For weeks he'd carried her through cold mornings and endless miles, whispering lies about how everything would be all right. Maybe now, finally, it wasn't a lie. When he stepped into the main room, Clara was already at the stove, her movements brisk and practiced. The scent of bacon filled the air, mixing with wood smoke. She'd pinned her hair up neatly, her dress plain but clean. The table was set for 3. "Morning," she said without turning. "Coffee's ready. Breakfast will be done in a minute." Jacob poured a cup and took a seat near the window. Outside, for a silver defense post, and the grass shimmered like glass. "You start your day early." "Ranch doesn't care how tired you are," she said. "Neither do cattle." He smiled faintly. "Then I came to the right place." Footsteps padded behind him. Lily appeared, blinking against the morning light, clutching her doll. "Papa?" "Right here, sunshine." He opened his arms, and she ran to him, still half asleep. Clara turned from the stove. "Good morning, Lily. You hungry?" The child nodded shyly. "Yes, Good, Clara said, setting a plate before her. You can have all you want. No one leaves my table hungry. As they ate, Jacob noticed how Clara watched Lily, not just with politeness, but with something gentler, a quiet ache that mirrored his own. When breakfast was done, he stood. I'll start with a corral fence. The back corner's leaning bad. You notice that already. Old habits, he said. Can't help but see what's broken. Clara gave him a long look. Tools are in the barn. Use what you need. He nodded and stepped outside, the cold biting but welcome. The air tasted of pine and smoke, sharp and alive. By mid-morning, he was deep in work, hammering boards back into place, losing himself in rhythm and labor. Every swing steadied him, every nail, every splinter, every heartbeat. After months of wandering, the sound of work felt like home. From time to time he looked toward the house. Through the window he caught glimpses of Clara moving about, and Lily trailing behind her like a small shadow. Once, her laughter carried across the yard, bright, unguarded, free. It stopped him cold. He hadn't heard that sound since before Martha died. When they met again at midday, Lily came running, holding something small in her hands. "Papa, look!" Mrs. Clara showed me where the hens hide their eggs. "I found 7. Jacob crouched to her level, his smile real this time. "That's so? You're getting good at ranch work already." Clara stood nearby, sunlight catching the loose strands of her hair. "She's a fast learner," she said, a hint of pride softening her tone. "She gets that from her mama," Jacob said quietly, "and maybe a little from me." The widow didn't answer, but the way she looked at him said enough. She understood loss. And maybe, just maybe, she understood what it meant to start again. The day wore on beneath a pale sky, the kind that promised snow before long. Jacob worked without pause, repairing gates, tightening boards, stacking tool that had been left to weather. Every sound, hammer, saw, the creak of leather, blended into the rhythm of survival. From the porch, Clara watched him for a moment. He moved like a man who'd lived hard but never gave in, every motion precise, efficient. She recognized that kind of quiet endurance. The frontier bred it into people like them, those who had lost everything but still got up at dawn to keep the world from falling apart. By late afternoon, the 3 of them met at the well for water. Lily's dress was dusty, her cheeks flushed from chasing chickens. She held out her hands, showing off a single egg. "I didn't drop it this time." Clara laughed softly. "That's better than most grown ranch hand can say." Jacob looked between them, the sound of laughter filling a space he hadn't known was empty. "She's got good teachers," he said, his eyes catching Clara's. For a heartbeat, the air between them felt different, warmer, heavier, before Clara broke the gaze and turned back toward the house. That evening, supper was simple but good. Bacon, biscuits, coffee strong enough to fight the cold. Lily ate fast, chattering about hens and kittens and how she'd named the tabby Dusty. Jacob listened, smiling quietly. After Lily had been tucked into bed, he found Clara sitting by the fire, mending an old blanket. The light threw shadows across her face, softening the lines time had drawn there. "She's happy here," he said quietly. "I haven't seen her smile like that in a long time." Clara nodded, eyes still on her stitching. Children bounce back faster than we do, maybe because they don't know how deep loss can cut. He hesitated, then sat across from her. "I used to think time healed everything. Turns out it just makes the scars quieter." Her needle paused mid-stitch. "How long since?" "4 months," he said, voice rough. "Fever took her. I was working in town when it happened. By the time I got home, it was too late." Clara set the blanket aside. "I'm sorry." He nodded once. "That's why we left Wyoming. I couldn't stand looking at that house. Every wall felt like a tomb." The fire popped between them, filling the silence with its low crackle. "I know that feeling," she said softly. "When Samuel died, I nearly left too. But the land was his dream. Feels wrong to abandon what he built." Jacob looked into the flames. Maybe holding on is its own kind of courage. Their eyes met again, and for the first time, the grief between them didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a bridge. Outside, the wind howled low across the plains, But inside the cabin, something fragile and alive began to stir. Morning came cold and sharp, the kind that stung your lungs when you breathed too deep. Clara was already at the stove when Jacob stepped in from barn, boots coated with frost, breath clouding the air. The scent of coffee and fried biscuits wrapped the room like a promise. "You're up early," she said without turning. "Never could sleep in," Jacob replied, brushing snow from his shoulders. "Old habit from working cattle drives. Dawn waits for no man." She smiled faintly. "And no woman, either." Lily stumbled out a moment later, rubbing her eyes, hair wild from sleep. "Morning, Papa, morning, Miss Clara." "Morning, sweetheart. You hungry?" Lily nodded and climbed into her chair, legs swinging. For a few minutes, they ate in peace, quiet clinking of forks, the wind whispering against the walls. It felt normal, dangerous kind of normal, the kind that could trick a person into thinking the world was done testing them. After breakfast, Clara pulled on her coat. "I'll ride out to check the north pasture. You two can handle the barn." "Consider it done," Jacob said. "Might take a look at that wagon axle, too. It's about to split clean through. Do what you think best. You've got a good eye." She left soon after, and the cabin seemed to lose some of its warmth with her gone. Jacob worked through the morning, fixing what he could, organizing the tack, hammering new nails into old wood. Each repair felt like stitching together pieces of a life that might still have a chance. By the time Clara returned, her cheeks were raw from wind, but her eyes burned with determination. "Snow's coming sooner than I hoped," she said. "We'll need to move the cattle down by next week, or we'll lose half before Christmas." "We'll make it," Jacob said, rolling up his sleeves. "I'll start prepping the lower pasture tomorrow." She nodded, relief flickering across her face. "I'll trust your judgment." That night, as the storm built far off in the mountains, they shared supper by the fire. Lily was half asleep in her chair before the plates were cleared. "She's tough," Clara said quietly, glancing at the child. "Most wouldn't hold up after what she's seen." Jacob nodded slowly. "She's stronger than she looks. Her mother always said she had steel in her bones." Clara hesitated. "You never talk much about your wife." "Not much to say that doesn't hurt," he admitted. "She was good, too good for the world she got." He looked at the flames, voice low. "She died protecting our daughter. I got there too late." Clara's throat tightened. "You were a lawman once, weren't you?" He looked up, surprised. "How'd you know that?" "The way you move. You skin everything, like you're waiting for trouble." A grim smile tugged at his mouth. "Used to wear a badge. Deputy Marshal out of Kansas. Made enemies doing the job too well. One of them found us. That's when everything changed." Clara met his gaze, calm and steady. "You're not running anymore, Jacob." "Not here." He didn't answer right away. Then he nodded once. "No, I reckon I'm not." The firelight flickered across their faces. Two people carved by loss, learning what it meant to start over. Outside, the snow began to fall, soft and slow. The first sign of a long winter, and the first night neither of them slept alone in spirit. The snow came hard that week, blanketing the land in silence. Every fence post, every rooftop, every breath turned white. The world outside their cabin slowed to a crawl, but inside, life pressed on. Jacob rose before dawn each morning, breaking ice from the water troughs, hauling feed through knee-deep drifts, keeping the herd alive one day at a time. Clara worked beside him when she could, refusing to stay idle. He tried to argue once. She shut him down with glare that could melt snow. By the third morning, the storm eased, leaving behind a sharp, biting calm. The ranch looked like a painting, perfect, still, and deadly. That was when Clara spotted them, riders on the ridge. 3 men, dark against the snow, watching. They didn't move closer, didn't wave, just sat there, silent and patient. Jacob saw them next and stiffened. "Get Lily inside," he said quietly. Clara didn't argue. She found the child by the hearth, still clutching a doll, and ushered her to the back room. "Stay here. Honey, don't come out till I say." When Clara returned, Jacob stood by the porch rail, eyes locked on the distant riders. "They are not locals," he said. "I know that kind of waiting. They are scouting, measuring distance, counting us. Who would send them?" He didn't answer right away. "You ever heard the name Hartwell?" Clara's jaw tightened. "Cyrus Hartwell owns half the valley. Samuel always said he wanted the other half. He's been after this land for years, our water rights, our grazing. When I refused to sell, fences started breaking. Cattle went missing. I just didn't have proof." Jacob's expression hardened. "You've got proof now, and a problem." By sundown, the riders were gone, but their message lingered like the cold, a warning or a promise. That night, Jacob stayed by the fire, cleaning the rifle he'd found in the barn. The way his hands moved told Clara this wasn't new to him. Lawmen didn't just fade into ranches, not completely. "You expecting trouble?" she asked quietly. He didn't look up. "I've learned it's better to be ready than regret it." "I thought you came here to stop running from that life." "I did," he said, sliding a bullet into the chamber. "But trouble doesn't care where you run." For a moment, the only sound was a faint click of metal and the wind breathing through the cracks. Then Clara said, "If it comes, we face it together." Jacob finally met her eyes. "Together, then." She nodded once, firm as a vow. Outside, the moon broke through the clouds, lighting the snow-covered plains in ghostly silver. Somewhere out there, 3 riders were heading back to Hartwell with news. And inside that cabin, a man who'd sworn he was done fighting was quietly loading his gun. The next morning, the air was sharp enough to bite through cloth. Jacob was already outside when Clara stepped onto the porch, her shawl pulled tight, eyes following the line of his footprints in the snow. He was pacing the fence, checking for signs of tampering. "They were here last night," he said without turning. "Fresh tracks by the creek. Someone cut the wire and drove a few head across the ridge." Clara's pulse quickened. "Hartwell's men." He nodded. "They are pushing, testing how far they can go before we push back." Clara's voice hardened. "Then they've tested enough." By noon, Jacob saddled up. "I'll ride the boundary, fix what I can, make sure they know we're watching." "I'm coming with you." "No," he said flatly. "Don't start," she snapped. "This land's mine, Jacob. If Hartwell wants a fight, he'll have to look me in the eye when he takes it." He didn't argue again. The two of them rode side by side through the frozen fields, snow crunching beneath the horses' hooves. The sky was low and gray, pressing down like a weight. They found the damage easily. Fence posts hacked apart, boot prints leading toward the hills, and the faint drag marks of hooves. It wasn't theft, it was intimidation, a warning written in trampled snow. Clara dismounted, jaw set tight. "He want me scared." Jacob scanned the horizon. "Then let's give him something else. A reason to think twice." By sundown, they had repaired what they could. The wind had shifted by the time they rode back, and so had something between them. Clara had always moved with quiet precision, but now Jacob saw the steel beneath her calm. She didn't just endure, she defied. When they reached the cabin, the smell of smoke hit them first. Not from the chimney, from the barn. Jacob kicked his horse hard and reached the structure in seconds. Flames crawled up the outer wall, crackling loud in the still air. Inside, horses screamed in panic. "Get Lily!" he shouted, leaping from the saddle. Clara sprinted toward the house. He grabbed a blanket, soaked it in the trough, and threw it over his shoulders before plunging into the burning barn. The heat was blinding. He freed the horses one by one, their hooves striking sparks as they bolted into the snow. Smoke clawed at his throat, but he kept moving. When he burst out the door again, coughing hard, Clara was there, hair loose, face streaked with soot, Lily clinging to her skate. "The fire's spreading," she yelled. "Get back to the house." "No, now." She hesitated, then pulled Lily towards safety while Jacob turned back to the blaze. He grabbed a shovel, throwing snow against the flames, but it was useless. Within minutes, the barn collapsed in a roar of heat and falling timber. When it was over, the sky was orange with dying firelight. The barn was gone. Smoke hung thick over the ranch like a shroud. Lily sobbed quietly, clutching her doll. "The kittens were in there," she whispered. Clara knelt beside her, voice breaking. I know. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Jacob looked over the ruins, jaw tight. Near the edge of the wreckage, half buried in snow, he spotted it, a burned torch handle. The wood was too clean, too deliberate. This wasn't an accident, he said darkly. They lit it and watched it burn. Clara straightened. Her face was pale, her voice cold. Then we rebuild. With what? He asked. Feed's gone, tools are gone, and winter's barely begun. She looked him dead in the eye. With whatever's left. Jacob stared at her for a moment, at the soot streaked across her face, the tears she refused to let fall. And he realized something fierce and unyielding had taken root in both of them. This was no longer just survival. It was war. By dawn, the fire was out, but the smell of smoke still clung to everything. Their clothes, their hair, the very air they breathed. The barn was nothing but blackened bones jutting from the snow. Clara stood in the ruins, her shawl wrapped tight against the wind, watching the smoke twist toward the pale sky. Jacob came up beside her, quiet. They wanted to break you, he said. They thought you'd run. She didn't look at him. Then they don't know me. Before noon, the first riders appeared. Not Hartwell's men this time. Neighbors. Tom Patterson from the next valley, then the Carters, then the Haywards, one wagon after another rolling in through the snow. They'd seen the smoke from miles away. Clara stepped off the porch to meet them, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. You didn't have to come. Tom Patterson dismounted, his breath fogging in the cold. Yeah, we did. Hartwell burned your barn. Next time, it'll be ours. You're not fighting this alone. Within an hour, the yard was alive with movement. Men unloading lumber, women carrying baskets of food, children trailing behind with hammers too big for their hands. A dozen families had shown up without being asked. Out here, when one ranch burned, they all felt the heat. Jacob moved among them, giving quiet orders, his old lawman's authority returning like muscle memory. We'll build the frame first, he said. Work in shifts. Keep a lookout posted on the ridge. If Hartwell sends anyone back, I want to know before they are close enough to smell the fire. By nightfall, a rough skeleton of the new barn stood against the stars. The air was filled with the rhythm of hammers, the scrape of saws, the snort of horses. Clara worked beside them until her hands bled. When the first wall went up, she stepped back, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion, and something else. Pride. Tom Patterson handed her a mug of coffee, steam curling between them. Your husband would have been proud, Clara. She swallowed hard. He'd have been grateful. Jacob joined her, his coat dusted with sawdust and frost. You were right, he said quietly. You rebuild, no matter what's taken. She looked at him, eyes bright from cold and firelight both. And you were right, too. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about all of us. He nodded. Then Hartwell's in for a surprise. That night, no one slept much. The neighbors camped in wagons and bedrolls scattered around the property. Men took turns standing guard while others tended the fire. Jacob stayed awake, rifle across his knees, scanning the horizon. Clara joined him just before midnight, 2 tin cups of coffee in hand. I've never seen them all come together like this, she said. He took the cup, his gloved fingers brushing hers. Desperation makes allies fast. She smiled faintly, and sometimes it makes families. The fire crackled between them, painting her face in gold and shadow. The sound of saws and voices had faded, replaced by the quiet breath of a land that refused to die. Jacob looked out over the new frame rising from the ashes. Tomorrow we build higher, he said. Clara followed his gaze. And stronger. He turned to her, eyes steady. And this time we make sure it lasts. 2 weeks later, the new barn stood tall against the winter sky, stronger, larger, and brighter than the one they'd lost. The wood was still raw, its scent rich and clean in the freezing air. It wasn't just a building, it was a declaration. Hartwell had meant to frighten them. Instead, he'd built them an army. The small ranchers of the valley were united now, sharing supplies, guarding one another's land, and refusing to bow. But Jacob knew men like Hartwell. Power didn't let go quietly. The first sign came one moonless night, the distant echo of hooves, faint but unmistakable. Jacob was sitting near the fire when he heard it. He was on his feet before the second beat reached his ears. "Clara," he said, his voice low but sharp, "get Lily to the cellar." Her eyes flicked to his face, reading the danger in it. Then she turned without a word and moved fast. Jacob stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, scanning the darkness. The sound grew clearer. More horses, too many for a neighborly visit. He counted at least 8. The riders halted just beyond the yard. Then came the voice, cold, smug, and too familiar. "Evening, Whitmore. Callahan." Jacob's jaw clenched. "Pike Morrison," he muttered. "Hartwell's enforcer." The man's tone was almost casual. "We've got business. You can come out peaceful, or we'll come in. Either way, you're leaving this property tonight." Jacob called back, voice steady. "What kind of business?" "Got a warrant," Morrison said. "Says you and the widow have been stealing Hartwell cattle." Jacob snorted. "Funny. You show me that paper, and maybe I'll believe it." A low laugh rolled through the darkness. "Can't blame a man for trying the easy way first. But I'm done asking." Before Jacob could answer, the thunder of hooves broke from the east. More riders, but these weren't Hartwell's men. A dozen neighbors came tearing through the snow, lanterns swinging, rifles glinting in the dark. Tom Patterson's voice boomed through the chaos. "That's far enough, Morrison." For a heartbeat, everything froze. 2 lines of men facing each other across the white field, the cold air humming with threat. Then another horse approached, steady and calm. The crowd parted to let him through. The silver star on his coat caught the firelight. "Marshal Brennan," Jacob said under his breath. The lawman reined in his horse, his voice cutting through the wind. "Evening, Pike. You mentioned a warrant." "Back in town," Morrison said, his confidence wavering. "Funny," Brennan said, "seeing as I'm the one who signs them. And I don't recall writing any tonight." His tone sharpened. "You're trespassing on private land with armed men in the dark. That sound legal to you?" Morrison shifted in his saddle. His men glanced at one another, uncertainty spreading like a cold wind. "Now," Brennan continued, his voice cool and even, "you're gonna turn those horses around and head back to town. You want to serve a warrant. You come see me with paper in hand. Until then, you're done here." For a long, taut second, no one moved. Then Morrison spat into the snow. "This ain't over." Jacob stepped forward, eyes hard. "You're right," he said. "Next time, bring more than words." Morrison's gaze lingered on him, a slow, poisonous promise, before he jerked his reins and rode off into the night, his men following. The silence that followed felt like the exhale of a storm that hadn't quite passed. Brennan dismounted, turning to Jacob. "He'll be back. Men like Hartwell don't take public humiliation kindly." Jacob nodded. "Then we'll be ready." The marshal's gaze softened just slightly. "Be careful, Callahan. Don't let this turn you back into the man you used to be." "I'm not that man anymore," Jacob said, "but I'll do what I have to." Brennan gave a faint nod. "That's all any of us can do." When he rode away, Clara appeared in the doorway, Lily peeking from behind her skirt. Jacob met her eyes, steady and calm now. "It started," he said quietly. Clara looked past him to the glowing new barn, standing tall against the stars. "Then we finish it." The snow had begun to melt by the time Hartwell came for them. Weeks had passed since the standoff, but everyone in the valley knew the silence wouldn't last. Men like Cyrus Hartwell didn't forget humiliation. They stewed in it. The morning broke pale and windless. Clara stood at the porch rail, coffee steaming in her hand, eyes on the distant ridge. The land stretched wide and empty, but she felt it in her bones. Trouble was near. Jacob was saddling his horse when the first gunshot split the air. The echo rolled across the plains like thunder. He dropped the reins and ran for the barn, rifle in hand. "Inside!" he shouted to Clara. "Get Lily to the cellar." But Clara didn't move. She was already pulling her shotgun from the doorway. "Not again," she said quietly. "Not this time." From the ridge came Hartwell's riders, kicking up snow and smoke. There were 6 of them, Hartwell among them, his black coat flapping like a vulture's wing. They came fast, confident, sure this would end the way it always had, with them taking what they wanted. Not today. Jacob dropped to one knee beside the wagon, sighted down his rifle, and fired. One rider went down hard. Clara fired next, the blast echoing across the valley. Another horse reared, throwing its rider. The fight was quick and vicious. The neighbors had been ready. Tom Patterson and two others appeared from the trees, cutting off Hartwell's flank. The air filled with gunfire, with splintering, snow churning under hooves. When the smoke cleared, only two of Hartwell's men were still standing, and they weren't fighting anymore. Hartwell himself lay on the ground, clutching his shoulder, his face twisted with shock and rage. Jacob approached slowly, rifle steady. "You've done enough damage," he said. "You'll ride out of this valley and never come back." Hartwell spat blood into the snow. "You think this changes anything? Men like me don't lose." Jacob's voice went low. "You already did." The lawman Marshal Brennan arrived not long after, summoned by the sound of gunfire. He took Hartwell and his men into custody. No argument this time. The ranchers watched in silence as the riders disappeared down the road, the storm of months finally breaking. When the last of the horses vanished from sight, Jacob turned back toward the ranch. Clara stood by the porch, Lily clutching her hand. The smoke still lingered in the air, but the sky above was clearing, blue, wide, endless. "It's over," she said softly. Jacob looked at her, exhaustion and relief etched deep in his face. "For now," he said. Then his voice gentled. "You were right not to run." She stepped closer, eyes shining. "And you were right to stay." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind brushed past, carrying the smell of pine and smoke, the sound of the land breathing again. Behind them, the barn stood tall and whole, a symbol carved out of ash and stubborn hope. Lily ran to Jacob, her small hand finding his. "Papa, are we staying here now?" He glanced at Clara, and for the first time in months, he smiled. "Yeah," he said. "I reckon we are." That night, the valley lay quiet under soft snow. In the cabin's glow, laughter returned, quiet, uncertain, but real. And for the first time since grief had hollowed their hearts, both Jacob and Clara let themselves believe that maybe, just maybe, this land wasn't cursed after all. It was home. If this story pulled you in, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button to let me know you want more stories like this. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these tales travel. And if you believe stories like this shouldn't be forgotten, share this video with someone who'd feel the heart behind it. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the bell icon, because more powerful Wild West love stories are coming soon. Tales of courage, redemption, and second chances under the wide open sky. Until next time, ride steady, keep your word, and never let the fire inside you go out.